Hi there everybody, my name is Ollie, I'm a junior doctor based in the UK, and today we're going to be doing a little bit of a viewer Q&A. On the 4th of August, that is Wednesday of the coming week when this video goes live, I start my first ever job as a junior doctor working in the general surgery department. And as we're now at more or less the 4th anniversary of the existence of this YouTube channel, I thought it was as important as ever to try and keep the chronology going and capture my thoughts and feelings as we move into this next big step. But before we start, guys, please be sure to hit that like button for me, leave a comment, and make sure that you are subscribed to the channel and hit the little notification bell to make sure that you don't miss any new updates or videos as they go live. Luke asks what it's like being the new guy again. You're a doctor now, but do you get treated well? New really is the word, and it's almost like starting medical school again in terms of how new you are, because I knew this was coming, right? But there is this appreciation, I think, when you start as a doctor that actually, although you do know a lot and medical school taught you a lot, the real world and how things are done in the real world and how complicated patients can be in the real world is very different to what you've learned at medical school, which is this kind of idealistic, perfect view of how we should treat people and what we should do. In reality, things don't work like that always. In reality, things often don't work like that. And so even though you are equipped with the knowledge of medical school and you are a newly qualified doctor, you are still extremely inexperienced. Thankfully, everybody knows this. So at least speaking from my own experience, I've been spending time the last couple of weeks with the outgoing FY1s and the FY2s working in my department, as well as the PAs who work there, who have been beyond wonderful and supportive. But perhaps more importantly, even the people who don't necessarily get it as such because they've not recently been through the process themselves, like the FY1s and 2s, people like nurses, healthcare assistants, phlebotomists, pharmacists, even older doctors like registrars and consultants, they also get it. And to quote one of the members of staff, pardon my French, but this really did make me feel a lot better. It was, look, Ollie, you will fuck up, but it's all right because we're expecting you to fuck up. Just do the work and we'll support you, and you'll get through this first job a much better doctor. And I found that really encouraging, because especially people like nurses who exist on a ward usually for a long period of time, getting very experienced, they know that we rotate around every 4 months and you get a brand new doctor, a newbie who doesn't really know what they're doing. And as long as you're nice to them and don't piss them off, you'll probably have a really good time and they'll look after you, and that certainly seems to be the case on my unit. The next question is, what's the most important thing to know as a junior doctor? I'm not obviously very well placed to answer that because I am about the most inexperienced junior doctor that it's possible to be. I think simply to echo the previous answer that I gave, the answer is just be nice to your colleagues and be nice to the patients. At least that's what I've been told is probably the most important thing, because particularly with your first FY1 job, I think the focus is simply to get to grips with being a doctor and survive the job and learn as much as you can. But we're still very much getting used to the process, and if you are nice to people and apologise when apologies are due and treat people ultimately with the respect that they deserve of you, then I really do get the feeling that your team will get you through whatever you need to get through. What departments are you rotating through for your first year? So I'm starting work within general surgery in a department called HPB, hepatopancreaticobiliary surgery. So that's liver, pancreas, bile duct, gallbladder. It's specifically a transplant unit, so we're looking after people either who need transplants, have recently had transplants, or have problems like pancreatitis, for example. So a lot of the patients on my unit are going to be quite sick and will often be acutely unwell. Then in December, I rotate to my academic block, where I've got protected contractual time for medical education research. In practice, it's going to be a mix of medical education and neurosurgery work. I do still have clinical contact. During that time, I have a lot of quite intense on-calls, but again, the focus will be on keeping my clinical skills up and making sure that I'm hitting my research outputs that I need to be hitting. And then my final job of FY1 is acute medicine, which is not quite as acute as emergency medicine like A&E, but acute medicine is more, it's been decided that people need to be admitted into hospital and it's at that stage where you're looking after them in the very early stages of their care, where they are acutely unwell, but they are not being managed by specialists yet. You're just trying to treat them and keep them alive and managed well until their care can be taken over by an appropriate specialist. Where do you find and choose job rotations? Now, that's a really complicated question, and I've answered this, I think, in my most recent video on how you actually apply for your first jobs as a junior doctor. The short answer is that choosing your jobs is about the last thing that you do in the job application process. To sum it up very, very briefly, the first thing that you will do is apply for your deaneries. This is the geographical area of the UK in which you want to train. So that might be London, it might be Yorkshire, it might be the northeast where I am, it might be Kent, Sussex, whatever you like. Then it actually takes several months until you find out which deanery it is you're being sent to for your foundation training. Then it's only once you've been allocated to a deanery that you'll be sent a list of all of the potential jobs. That is a combination of 6 rotations, which together form one job that you will do for the 2 years. So once you've been allocated your deanery, you then have to rank all of the different combinations of jobs, and then depending on your application scores, you will be allocated a job at the very top of your list or at the very bottom. But the 2 things to take away are jobs come as a combination of 6. It is not the case that you can choose, I want to do A&E and paediatrics and psychiatry and general surgery and vascular surgery and neurology. You can't pick and choose. You choose from pre-allocated combinations of 6, and it is these combinations that you apply for. So it's often the case that you'll find 4 or 5 that you like, and there might be 1 job of 6 that you don't like. You may get very lucky and find all 6 that you like. However, that is very rare. In practice, you basically need to do a mix of hospital medicine, hospital surgery, and usually a community job such as psychiatry or GP. That is the combination that you should expect to be doing, because you need to build your generalist skills. You can't simply do all surgery jobs or all medicine jobs if you know which way your career wants to go. It's still too early for that. The focus is on getting generalist skills as a young doctor. Danielle asks, could you touch on any expenses which are expected or unexpected that came with it? This is a really good question, and the big expense that I wasn't expecting, or perhaps should have been expecting but wasn't, was the cost of actually moving house and starting FY1. Because often what you find is that medical programs don't finish when other courses do. In my case, my course actually finished in July as opposed to May or June, where the academic year would normally finish. Now, what this meant in practice is that we actually had to rent the house in which me and my housemates were staying in for an additional month, because our contract was 12 months. However, our course finished the next month, so we still needed to have somewhere to live. So this meant extending our contract by another month, which you have to pay for. However, because I was then expected to move to my F1 job, or the location of my F1 job, in the middle of July, this obviously meant that I also needed somewhere to live here in Newcastle from the middle until the end of July, so I also had to pay my first month of rent here. So even before we continue, I'm now renting a house in Coventry for a month, which was thankfully just 1 room in a house share, but I'm now renting my 1-bed place here in Newcastle for the first month. So we're now on about £1,000 for those 2 things. Then you've got to, obviously, for your new place, they'll want a deposit, which is another 4 weeks rent, so that's another £800 that you've got to find. There's then the cost of actually moving all your stuff, getting everything you need, which might be furniture, even just things like a vacuum cleaner, an ironing board, things that your new house may not have, but you actually need to have a semblance of a tidy place. And all of this comes with the knowledge that you do not actually get paid for your FY1 job until the end of August. So you don't get any money in July usually, and you then won't have any salary until the end of August, by which time you'll usually have to have paid another month's rent. So it's very realistic that you may just be slapped with a bill of £2,000 or £3,000 before you actually get any money back. And it's really important to note that many NHS trusts actually do have policies where you can reclaim a lot of these costs. Like my trust will fund your relocation expenses, which for me was about £400, so obviously really well worth having. And there are hardship funds and things available, but don't underestimate how expensive starting FY1 can be. Med school, how was your timetable, time off, summer holidays for grad med /4 years? For my course at Warwick, you get your first summer holiday like you would kind of any other degree. You finished in June, I think, and then you'd have July, August, most of September off. From then, so years 2 through to 4, you got no summer holidays. Usually there was kind of a week or two off here and there around holidays like summer and Christmas and things like that, but in my case, because I was usually working on something, whether that was this channel or research or presentations or whatever, I was always quite busy. That meant that in the previous 4 years I've actually had very, very little time off. In phase 3, that is the preparation period for finals, the sort of last 18 months, it was actually the case that we had an annual leave system where you could take up to 4 weeks of annual leave. Usually you'd have 2 weeks before August and 2 weeks after August of final year to take off. And I know things have changed now for the younger years on the course. They get relatively a lot more time off than we did, with sort of breaks between blocks and Wednesdays clear and things. But whatever you do, medicine is always going to be quite a busy course, especially with 4-year programs. With 5-year courses, usually you do continue to get the summer holidays. 4-year programs, no, it is a long slog. The next question is, when do you start prepping for specialty applications? And then the same person has asked, how does specialty application work? Well, the short answer is that you actually apply for specialty quite late on in medical training. The way it normally works is you'll do med school, which is between 4 and 6 years. You'll then do Foundation 1 and Foundation 2, another 2 years. What you will then do for most specialties is apply for some sort of core training pathway, either core medical training or core surgical training, which is another 2 to 3 years. And it is only then that you will apply for your specialty training post, which could be in cardiology, neurology, surgery, whatever you like. There are some specialties, a smaller number of specialties, that recruit straight after F1 and F2. That's things like GP, neurosurgery, cardiothoracics, pediatrics, and so on. It's a small group of specialties, but these are what we call run-through pathways. Now, to address the actual question, when can you start preparing for specialty application? In practice, the answer is actually at any time. And often what you find is that people during medical school, myself included, you develop an idea for the types of specialties that you like, even if it is as broad as medicine or surgery, and then you can actually be working on your specialty training portfolio during medical school. So for me, I know I want to be a surgeon, for example, so that means that I can work on surgical research projects. I joined Surgical Society at my med school and became the president. You can get shadowing experience, you can make sure you're spending time in theatre, doing courses and so on to boost your surgical skills, because all of these things are going to be valuable when the time comes. And the danger is that often people can leave it very late before starting to prepare their portfolio, and then they realise they're competing against all of these people who have very well developed portfolios already. Now, that is absolutely not to say that you should base your entire med school existence around preparing for specialty, because you absolutely shouldn't. There is more than enough time built into the system to develop all your specialty interests. Don't let it rule your life, particularly the first few years of medical school. Take it easy and get used to being in medical school. But from there, you can start to think about the long term and applying for your specialty posts. What happens if you don't get into the specialty you want? Unfortunately, this is going to be a sad reality for a very small number of people. Now, it does depend on the specialty you want to do. For example, you will never struggle to get a GP training number, for example, or a psychiatry training number, or increasingly a pediatrics training number. Some specialties will fall over themselves to try and recruit people because there are lots of training jobs available and not enough people want to do it to satisfy the demands that the NHS has for these consultants. So for many specialties it's not a problem, and actually in practice many people will take 1, 2, 3 application cycles to get their training number, because training posts are very competitive at every stage, but for some specialties more than others. Now, there are certain specialties, things like plastics, cardiothoracics, neurosurgery, where this is going to be more of a reality for some people, and there is actually a cap often in place on how many times you can apply. And it is going to be the case that some people, what is often referred to as the lost tribe, in medicine who weren't able to get their specialty that they wanted then have this crisis where they have to decide what they want to do. Often that means if they want to do something like neurosurgery, for example, they'll take a core surgical training job, maybe try applying for neurosurgery later through a core pathway later on. But oftentimes people simply pick a similar specialty, find that they really like it, and then carry on with that and train through to consultancy. There are actually ways of demonstrating your competencies. This is called the CSER pathway, which allows you to enter specialties without having done certain sets of prerequisites, but that's very complicated. But just to try and answer the question in a short, snappy way, the reality is that most people, probably 90-95% of people, do ultimately get into the specialty that they want. It is only the people in these uber competitive specialties of potentially not getting that job, but there will always be something they can do. How good is it to be out of Cov? Very good. I just unfortunately formed absolutely no sentimental bond to Coventry while I was living there, because I came from Newcastle and I think I always knew that I wanted to come back here. I didn't kind of put roots down or anything like that. It's not a terrible place to live and there is plenty going on. I just never had any visions of staying there, and because of that I never formed a particular bond to it. Perhaps to answer a slightly different question, I'm very glad and very happy to be back in Newcastle, let's put it that way. Did you shit a brick? Yes. There is a very steep learning curve that is clearly coming with starting FY1. Like I said, you learn lots of things in medical school about the way that the world could in theory work if everyone had access to healthcare of great standard and did as their doctors asked them to do, and equally had good doctors that were compassionate and understanding. The real world is just a completely different thing when it comes to doing medicine. But like I say, thankfully the team is lovely and I'm sure I'm going to be helped to navigate through this change to the real world of medicine. How do you support your mental health with such a busy and stressful transition? That is a really interesting question and a really good question. I think as it goes, in terms of my own mental health, I am quite resilient. I think maybe that's with simply wanting to be a neurosurgeon. I know I definitely put up with stressful situations and demands on my life that many of my colleagues simply wouldn't tolerate, but I do it because there is this end goal in mind, and I'm sure that a lot of you can identify with that position. Because of that, I am used to being put under large amounts of stress on short notice and having little or very irregular sleep. That's just something that I've gotten used to. But I think it's things like keeping in touch with friends and family who, even, you know, non-medics don't necessarily get what you're going through, but they do understand actually more than I thought people would about how difficult this transition is. And if I just disappear for a week or don't reply to things, people usually get it. I certainly have been very lucky that friends have messaged me asking, you know, how's it all going? Even people who I've not spoken to for years have been reaching out. And obviously I'm lucky in that I have the community of you guys to talk to, who many of you message me very frequently. Definitely put in the effort to get to know your new team well. If there are social events, if there are after work drinks and things, definitely go to those. Make friends with the new FY1 starting, with people you see in the doctor's mess and the nursing team and other people in your ward, because it's these people that are going to be your kind of lifeline for the next few years. And to their credit, many trusts have things in place, things like nominated wellbeing guardians and things like that. It's not always going to be fantastic, and I know a lot of trusts don't do this very well, but certainly with mine, they've made it quite clear if I am having difficulties and getting stressed out by the transition, they have made it clear who to talk to. You have a supervisor, you have colleagues. So I think just not withdrawing and trying to keep engaging. If you are having problems, just like would have been the case in medical school, that's got to be the most sensible way forward. Are staff understanding of the fact that you are newly qualified with their expectations? Yes, they definitely are. I did have to qualify when I turned up on my first day and joined the ward round with a registrar that I was actually brand new and qualified, and I couldn't navigate the IT systems and take notes and things as quickly as they were used to. So I did just have to say, I'm really sorry, I'm one of the new F1s. I've never been here before, can we just slow down a tiny bit, please? But I was trying and showing that I was trying to do my best. And they got it very quickly, and the nurses, a lot of them were very reassuring as well, that they actually came up to me and were like, oh, are you the new F1? Don't worry, we'll look after you. If you've got any questions, just come and ask me. And actually, when I made my first prescribing error, for example, which came in the first week, because I'm brand new to the IT system, electronic prescribing is completely new to me. I'm used to paper Cardexes, and I actually assigned a new medication to the wrong patient. I did realise, thankfully, very quickly what I'd done, cancelled it and assigned it to the right patient. But one of the nurses came and found me anyway. I'm like, oh, Ollie, did you mean to prescribe that for this person? I just wanted to check. And this is something I've seen nurses do before, and you know when it's being done to you, but nurses know that doctors can be a bit arrogant and a bit egotistical and things, which I'm sure many of us can. And instead of saying, what are you doing, you complete moron, like I could have done a better job with that than you, they will say, are you sure you meant to do that, doctor? Or, can I just check why you wanted to do this, doctor? And it's kind of a very friendly way of saying, check yourself, stop being stupid, and think about what you're doing. But yes, absolutely safe to say that so far, everyone knows, especially with your first job of FY1, the feeling I'm getting is that people assume you know nothing, that you are completely incompetent, and they will support you in kind of developing your skills and getting used to the system. So thankfully, so far been really supportive. Now that's where I'm actually going to wrap this video, guys, because there is a huge slog of questions to get through, so I'm actually going to release these over the next few days. There's probably going to be 2 or 3. This is where we'll end the first, but please be sure to keep your eyes open for those, because I do want to try and answer all of your questions and make sure that you get the answers you deserve. So please be sure to hit that like button for me, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss your question being answered, and head over to ollieburton.com where you can find my blog and all of my videos as they get uploaded, as well as get in touch if you want to send me a message privately. Always happy to help with applications and so on. But take care, and I'll see you next time.